cases of a new mutation in the UK and say those who tested positive and their contacts have now been traced and advised to isolate. A government scientist has told Times Radio that society will need to learn to live with a substantial degree of COVID-19 deaths in the future. But Professor Andrew Hayward from the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies said he believes the worst of the pandemic seems to be over. Professor Hayward believes the UK's large-scale vaccine rollout has aided the fight against coronavirus, but said it's unlikely to disappear for good.
Given the societal trade-offs, we are going to have to live with a degree of mortality that will be substantial. I think it will get less over time as more people get vaccinated and as more people get immune. I do believe that we've been through the worst of this. The main concern, of course, is new variants that may partially escape immunity, but I do say partially.
The First Minister of Northern Ireland has accused the EU of taking a very belligerent approach to the country's trade problems. The EU's threatened legal action after the UK extended the grace period, limiting goods checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Arlene Foster says the amount of red tape at the moment is completely out of step with what post-Brexit arrangements were meant to do.
It was quite clear to me, having attended the Joint Committee last week, that the European Commission was simply not listening to what was going on in Northern Ireland, and therefore there was a need to act. These grace periods come to an end at the end of the month, and if the UK government hadn't taken action, that would have caused untold difficulties for our ports.
British travellers will be welcome on holiday in Cyprus as long as they've had 2 COVID jabs. The Cypriot government says holidaymakers who've been fully vaccinated can travel there from May the 1st, although UK government travel restrictions on going abroad remain in place until the 17th. And the National Trust has mapped out the threats posed by climate change to its stately homes, landscapes and coastline. It's warning the number of its sites facing a high level of threat from coastal erosion and extreme heat and flooding could treble over the next 40 years. The weather, a mostly dry day today with some sunny spells and light winds. England's hopes of fighting back in the 4th cricket test against India are fading fast. Joe Root's side were all out for 205 in their first innings. We'll have a full sports roundup at 30:30 and there is...
Across the UK, on DAB digital radio, on the free Times Radio app and on your smart speaker, this is Gloria de Piero on Times Radio.
Welcome back. It's Gloria de Piero with you till 1. And at this point in the programme, we like to hear people's stories about how news and politics have affected their lives. And we were inspired by William Carter this week. He believes his severe dyslexia and dyspraxia have been instrumental to his success. He graduated with a first at the University of Bristol, and now he's studying for a PhD in the United States. He's on a mission to ensure that children from similar backgrounds have the same access to education that he has had. Will said it's all about pushing yourself to learn differently.
I was reading of Mice and Men in my English class in Year 9, and in describing Lenny, my teacher used the word retard. And I remember challenging that teacher, and again, I was verbally confident. I was challenging them. I was telling them, no, this word should not be used by you, particularly to describe someone with lower functioning. And what my teacher said to me, and I'll never forget this, he said to me, "What? Do you identify with Lenny then? Are you a retard?" And what they said afterwards was even worse. They said to me, "Go on then, read this out for the class, write on the board." And what that meant is you could kind of talk the talk, but you couldn't walk the walk. They knew precisely what they were doing. They were kind of silencing my every motivation and making me feel unbelievably small.
Well, let's talk to Darren Clark, Claude Williams, Hannah Khan and Zoe Jane Littlewood now, who all have dyslexia. Hello.
Good morning.
Hey. Morning.
Hi. Darren, I'm going to start with you, if I may, and your story. How old are you, first of all?
44 years of age.
44, and you were only diagnosed 7 years ago with dyslexia. Tell me what prompted you to get tested.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, all those years before were undiagnosed dyslexia, and it actually happened. I was working from home. There was a TV program on in the background, and it was an interview around dyslexia, and I didn't know at the time it was an interview with dyslexia. I thought it was just someone interviewing someone about starting up their floristry business, and they kept using the terminology dyslexia and went through kind of some of the things that they deal with on a daily basis in the sense of what they struggle with. And it kind of resonated with me straight away. And I always remember the lady saying, I can't spell, kind of the flowers and the bouquets, but I can tell you by colours, and I remember it this way. And it was kind of one of those you had to kind of listen to that program, and it was really kind of resonated with me. And so I, once I kind of figured out how to spell dyslexia, because it's an incredibly difficult word to spell, I googled it, and it started my journey to finding out about the diagnosis. I took an online test, and then I went in and got a further diagnosis and found out I had severe dyslexia and ADHD.
And how did getting that diagnosis change your life?
I think it gave me a lot more clarity, because I was enabled to I kind of punished myself in a way for maybe some of the promotions I didn't get, my kind of lack of education, all these things that I felt that there was something kind of holding me back, even though I'm incredibly motivated in kind of positive thinking in things. It was almost like a relief, really. It gave me a lot more kind of understanding, because I knew that there was always something, but I just didn't know what.
And you were at school in the 80s and early 90s.
Yes.
Not too far from when I was at school, actually, a little bit earlier. But I don't remember dyslexia ever being mentioned when I was at school. What about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think at the age of kind of 36, I kind of only really started to understand what dyslexia, neurodiversity, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia, all these things that meant. But dyslexia was definitely not something that was spoken about for me, and definitely not in the school system that I was in at the time.
And you had a difficult time at school because of your dyslexia. Tell me about that.
Yes, so a lot of the time, primary school was fine as far as I can remember, because you weren't really kind of tested. Secondary school was really difficult, even from the first day. The biggest thing was the isolation, because from the first day you were given tests and kind of mini exams to see which classrooms you would sit in. And I always remember the very first day going into the school hall with so many other students and your friends, and each one being called out to go into different classrooms. And from day one, I was put in a little classroom with about 4 other students. And I ended up 5 years of my education was I spent most of it in this thing called the unit, which was basically an old rundown porter cabin, which was kind of placed in the middle of the school playing field. And a lot of the time I had, hundreds and hundreds of different substitute teachers, where it was almost kind of like a daycare, really, because they didn't really know what to do with me. It was the terminology they used, and I think it's, definitely one I wouldn't use, is that's where they sent the troubled kids. And it was, looking back on it, it was horrible, because at that age, all you want to do is kind of, blend in and be a part of, a community with your friends. And each day I was kind of isolated and just given colour and in books to kind of occupy myself.
God, it makes me angry just listening to that. How did your parents react?
Yeah, I'm always been kind of kept things to myself in that sense. But I guess during the time with the educational side of it, I kind of, I wouldn't accept. Every day I would go to school hoping that I would be put into a different class. So when I'd come home from school, I always remember having massive migraines and kind of real bad headaches. And that was because later looking into it, my brain was kind of over focusing and trying to kind of take everything in. So I kept a lot of the stuff to myself, the stress and the anxiety, those elements, and I didn't really kind of tell many people about the what was going on in the school. I just thought that was kind of the process.
Are you angry now?
I'm angry. I'd say I'm a little bit upset in the sense that I've had kind of my education stolen from me, if I can use that correct terminology. But I'm even now I'm a massive advocate of education. I've spoken to over 85,000 students, in different parts of the country and different parts of the world around entrepreneurship, neurodiversity, education. But I tend to not dwell on the past. But I really don't want to see another student have to go through what I went through, because it's not just the dyslexia in the sense that we can't read or, we find it difficult to read and write. There's so many other elements to dyslexia as well, not just the reading and the writing.
And Darren, tell us what you do now.
Yeah, so now I'm a global neurodiversity consultant. So I work with the educational system, and I also work with corporates across the globe, raising more awareness around neurodiversity with teaching, training, and speaking. So
very successful.
Bless you, thank you. I love what I do, and I love that element of inspiring others. The big thing to me is to, I always remember kind of how I felt, and even not just in the school side of it. I managed to get a quite successful career in corporate without knowing about dyslexia, but I also know how difficult it can be in the workplace as well. So I guess it's just raising more awareness, starting those conversations, and I found it really can help the individual massively.
So Hannah, Claude, and Zoe, you're all younger than Darren, and have had quite a different experience, thankfully. Hannah, tell me what age you were when you were diagnosed.
Well, I was diagnosed at 13. And that was around year 8, I believe. So my experience would actually be quite different, because my mother is a dyslexia specialist and we've got a history of dyslexia in the family. However, it wasn't really picked up on in school. So my mother noticed how my sister was struggling for a very long time and saw the same signs in me. So she started with a lot of learning techniques when I was younger. So it didn't really appear when I was in primary school, but secondary school it kind of came out.
So, Hannah, how old are you? Just remind us.
I'm 21.
You're 21. So, goodness me. So that's really interesting. So I was thinking it's all going to be different now because I'm not much older than Darren. But actually, you're really young, and it took your mum to sort of her knowledge and expertise. It took your mum to sort of get involved and say, actually, Hannah's dyslexic.
Definitely. I would definitely say that society in general has become more open to talking about difficulties that people face on the neurodivergent scale. However, actually putting it into practice is a lot more difficult, and there's a lot of resistance in schools and workplaces because it's unknown. Unless you're a specialist, unless you've experienced it, you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. And unless there's the communication which we're doing today, no one will understand in the future.
So, what do you do for a living? Before I ask the next question, actually.
I'm currently studying at university. I'm doing an engineering degree. Right. So it's been really interesting, really difficult, definitely different to what I expected, but I'm enjoying it now with the support that I can get.
And Hannah, so you can go to university and say, by the way, I'm dyslexic, and presumably the lecturer goes, sort of fine, or in fact, what does the lecturer say? Do they make provision? But it's no big deal, I'm hoping, now.
Absolutely. So now we can, in my university and most universities, you have a dyslexia and disability service. So you apply for these roles, and you provide proof of your dyslexia through a report or anything else that's happened through like a doctor's report, a specialist report, and you go through a few steps, and then they basically lay out what they can do for you, because they understand that the team understands that you learn in a different way to everyone else, and you process a different way to the conventional methods. So, for example, I would be given extra time in exams, and potentially coursework if it's a timed coursework. This is really helpful because my processing speed isn't as fast as the general person. It will take me at least a few minutes to read one paragraph and to fully understand it, whereas a lot of my friends will just be finishing a task up after I've just only finished reading it. So you'll get a lot of support in terms of extra time, some systems now, because technology is advanced to the point where you can have speech-to-text systems, and also like mind mapping note systems as well that really help during lectures.
Okay, really interesting. Claude, hello, Claude.
Hey.
Tell me about you. How old are you, and how old were you when you were diagnosed?
Hi, so I am 31 today, and
happy birthday.
So not as in this very day, but as in I'm 31 now.
Oh, okay.
No problem at all. And I was about 7 or so when I was diagnosed.
Okay, and how did you get diagnosed? Was it a teacher? What happened?
It was, to be honest with you, quite lucky in my case. So at the time I was attending Beavers, which is like the younger version of Scouts. And the lady who was running the session happened to notice that I had a few, I guess, habits and behaviours that were quite similar to her son, who she had recently found out was dyslexic. And as a result of that, she recommended to my mum that I should go and get an assessment. And from there, that's when we found out that I am also dyslexic as well.
And how much of a difference did that diagnosis make? Was it a relief? Were you worried? Was it a bit of everything?
So I think at the time I was definitely too young to really understand it all. But from my mum's perspective, I think she definitely gave it a lot more context. So also to give you more information, I'm a twin as well. And it was, my sister didn't have a lot of the same, I guess, symptoms. And as a result, she was going much further ahead of me in terms of education. So it gave a bit of context to that. However, I can say that if I hadn't received a diagnosis at such a young age, then my story today would probably be very different.
Claude, you are, I think I'm reading this correctly, you have started 6 businesses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wow, that's super achiever. So your dyslexia certainly has not hindered your success at all. Maybe the opposite.
You know what? I'm going to say that my success in many ways is partly because of my dyslexia, but also partly despite of my dyslexia. One thing I will say is that it comes with pros and cons. And I guess the lesson I've had to learn over the years is to like play to your strengths and find ways to compensate for your weaknesses.
Okay. Good explanation. Hello, Zoe.
Hey, how are you?
I am well, and looking forward to hearing your story. How old are you?
I'm 22.
You're 22. And how old were you when you were diagnosed, Zoe?
I was diagnosed early year 7, so around 11 or 12 years old.
And how did it happen to you? How was that diagnosis? How was it spotted?
Well, for me, it was technically spotted in year 6. I had so many teachers in year 6, and luckily one of those teachers had a little bit more understanding as to what dyslexia was, and she sat down with me and she was showing me different coloured papers because I was really, really struggling. And so she showed me these different coloured papers to help with visual aid and kind of talked me through a little bit what dyslexia was. But my mum was actually pushing for me to get tested at a much younger age, but my primary school, for funding issues, just wasn't able to accommodate that. So when I went to secondary school, they did have a teacher who was able to assist in that and then get the test done.
We think of dyslexia, I do certainly, as something that makes it just hard to read. It's much more than that. Zoe.
Definitely. It is, and I think that's the general consensus for a lot of people, that it's just something that affects maybe our writing or abilities such as that, when realistically it affects everyday life. Like, for example, one of the most common ones for us dyslexic people is something as simple as left and right. I am constantly forgetting my lefts and rights, and I'm like, that would really affect me in the real life world of driving, for instance. I can't really be in a car and the instructor tells me to go left and I go right. So I do think there's more to dyslexia than just what is kind of talked about in the sense of the education side.
Really interesting, because I can't tell the difference between my left and right eye. And I don't get it, I don't drive. But maybe that's a whole different conversation. Darren, let me come back to you. When you hear about the experiences of Hannah, Claude and Zoe, who are younger than you, how does it make you feel? Do you think, oh, God, thank goodness things were improved, or do you think we've still got so much further to go? Tell me your reaction on hearing them.
No, absolutely, and I think the diagnosis is fantastic to hear. People are being diagnosed a lot earlier, definitely a lot earlier than I was. But it's like I said, it's not just about the diagnosis in that sense. It's the whole journey. But I really do think speaking to schools and organisations, there is so much more to be done. I mean, we're very fortunate in the UK. We have an incredible wealth of knowledge. We have the British Dyslexia Association. We have other organisations that can kind of help and support this element. But I think and having a platform like this to be able to share, start the conversation around dyslexia, I think it's definitely improved, especially the last 5 years. But like you mentioned, there is still so much more to be done, and understanding dyslexia as well. As you mentioned, it's not just about, there's so many elements of my dyslexia that's not just down to reading and writing. It's behavioural, it could be mindset, it could be motivation, it could be anxiety, it could be depression. There's so much more if you delve into it to understand it a little bit more.
Oh, well, that seems like a good moment to bring in Tori Sparks, who is dyslexia assessor and teacher and head of projects at Helen Arkell Dyslexia Charity. Hi, Tori.
Good morning.
Tori, before I ask you how far our understanding of dyslexia has come, I just want to say to Darren that we've had a message in via email from a listener called Michael to say that he's right with you. So that's nice that we're getting positivity and love from our listeners. So, Tori, how far has our understanding of dyslexia come since Darren's childhood?
I would say, first of all, it's very uplifting to hear Zoe, Claude, Hannah and Darren speaking. And I would completely agree with them all. It's very much about raising awareness and having the conversation, both in terms of an organisation like ourselves, but also as individuals, because I have dyslexia and dyspraxia in my own family. So what everyone has said really resonates with me this morning. But I think our understanding is still growing in terms of research is still ongoing. Agreeing a definition of dyslexia is actually ongoing. The conversation is still robustly being discussed. But I would say that certainly over the last 20 years, dyslexia is now acknowledged as a specific learning difficulty or difference. It is recognised as a protected characteristic under the Equality Act of 2010, which allows people to get the reasonable adjustments that they need, both in education and the workplace. But there is still a heck of a lot of work to be done because it is very misunderstood, and it is actually, it is a hidden disability, and especially in the education system. There are other conditions, neurodevelopmental conditions, that weigh more heavily in terms of the behaviours that are seen with those, and therefore they draw down more funding than, say, dyslexia does.
That's interesting that you describe it in terms of a hidden disability, particularly after the chats that we had. Zoe, do you feel like it's a hidden disability?
Definitely. Pretty much going off the point, it is when you think about it, because dyslexia, it's not a physical thing. You can't see that someone is dyslexic, and it goes with a lot of conditions, like especially like mental health conditions. Just because someone may not look like they're suffering, that doesn't mean to say that they are. So I would totally agree, in a sense that dyslexia is something that it isn't seen, therefore, in a sense, it's not heard. It doesn't look like anything's wrong. So certain people won't take the time to understand it more, because to everyone else, we just look like regular people. However, we have our own little ways of doing things.
Tori, could you go into any workplace these days and say at the interview, by the way, I'm dyslexic?
That's a really good question. And actually, It goes back to how comfortable you feel in your own skin. It's that level of self-confidence to be able to say that. And so self-advocacy, especially in adults and in the workplace, comes down very much to the individual. And unfortunately, even though the legislation is in place to protect people and give them the reasonable adjustments they need, there are some very stereotypical views still out there, and so many people feel that it will act against them, it will be a negative if they advocate the difficulties that come with their dyslexia. I think that is changing as we recognise a more neurodiverse society, and people are having the confidence, and in actual fact, companies are now wanting to create an environment in which people feel safe to come forward and explain, for example, that they find it hard to multitask, so please don't ask me to stand up and read aloud in a meeting and take the minutes at the same time, that sort of thing. But it's still, it's a sort of personal dilemma for the individual in terms of how secure they feel in their particular workplace to be able to do that.
Right, I'm going to ask each of you, Darren, Hannah, Claude and Zoe, don't worry if you haven't thought of anything immediately, but if there was one thing that you could change, I was thinking societal change actually, to help or to enable people with dyslexia to fulfil all the wonderful things actually that you have all fulfilled, is there anything that comes to mind? And you might all say the same thing, but Darren.
Yeah, I just think it's confidence really in believing in yourself, and I know that's seems kind of a bit blasé, but it really is. It's kind of that inability to kind of know yourself and have that confidence to believe that what you're doing is right. That's really helped me massively.
And Claude, you've got a magic wand to change one thing. Would you change anything about society and its approach to dyslexia?
I think the approach that I would take would be making it more of an easy conversation for people to have. I think it's just if we all broadly had a deeper understanding of our strengths and weaknesses and differences with dyslexia or all other types of neurodiversity, then I think that will mean that everybody can create an environment where we can all thrive.
Hannah?
Very similar to everyone else's, but I think I would probably go on a more practical approach and change the conventional teaching methods from just listening and reading to a more engaged kind of method that will help everyone, not just neurodivergent people.
And so do you have anything to add? It's always hard when you're last in the lineup, but do you have anything to add?
I was sitting there like, no, I would totally just want to echo what everyone else has said, especially changing the education side of things and also maybe trying to promote more funding towards it. I think by doing that, we can definitely make change happen.
And just finally on that point, I will come back to you, Tori. What are the best ways to teach people with dyslexia?
It's really a multi-sensory approach. So our brain learns, it wants to learn in the easiest way possible. So if we deliver information in a variety of ways, seeing, hearing, doing, it's much better than just hearing. Dyslexic people find it very arduous receiving information purely via their ears, verbally, and so if they can do something with it and they can see something and interject colour and picture and pattern, that's going to be far more memorable for the brain.
I have I've really enjoyed listening to you all. I've learned a lot from all of you, and I just want to say thank you. So Tori Sparks, Hannah Khan, Darren Clark, Claude Williams, Zoe Jane Littlewood, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we do get some messages saying that you don't want to hear more about Harry and Meghan, but I just don't believe you. CBS have said that they'll be releasing another clip of that interview at midday UK time. We'll bring it to you here on Times Radio as soon as we get it. And a new generation of female leaders is at the forefront of world politics, and Estonia's Prime Minister is the most recent to join the ranks. In today's Times, Anne McElvoy talks to some of the power players. To read that and all the articles on the Times website, just head to the